Hello, everyone, and welcome to this brief introduction to dubbing and subtitling. What does it take? What are the differences? We are going to share our experience with you. So I'm Estelle Renard. I've been a professional audiovisual translator since 2001, from English and German into French, and I specialize in dubbing and also subtitling and voiceover translation.
Hello, I'm Jean-François Cornu. I'm also a French translator working from English into French. I work in subtitling, screenplay translation, and also book translations for books on cinema and art. Oh, sorry, forgot about this. We're both members of the French National Association of Audiovisual Translators, called ATA, and we represent this association within Audiovisual Translators Europe, AVTE, which is the European Federation of National Audiovisual Translators Associations.
So let's start it. We've planned for a short-ish intervention so that we have some time for questions. So prepare your questions for the second bit of this workshop. So the general audience is often unaware of the differences between subtitling and dubbing. And in fact, as French translators coming from a very dubbing country, when we say we are audiovisual translator, we are often asked by people outside our trade, "Oh, you're the one who does all the voices."
And such misconceptions are quite common, which is why we're here to tell you about the main aspects of dubbing and subtitling. Both are very specific kinds of translation, as they not only involve translating text, of course, but also taking into account the relationship of dialogue with the image and the sound of a fiction or documentary film, of a series, or of a video game as well. So what are exactly the differences between dubbing and subtitling?
Well, as you said, dubbing and subtitling are two very, very different ways to translate film and audiovisual dialogue. Sometimes it can be seen as two completely different trades. Dubbing is a speech-to-speech adaptation. You substitute the original dialogue and voices with different languages and voices.
And subtitling is a speech-to-text translation or adaptation, which consists in inserting a written translation of the original dialogue within the image.
And there's a third form of audiovisual translation we are not really going to tackle today, which is the voiceover translation. It's used for fiction more in countries such as Poland and Russia, whereby the dubbing voice are superimposed on the original voices and which can be faintly heard in the background. And voiceover is also used in France and Germany for documentary. So, but we are not going to talk about this. But if you have questions, we are here. So in the second bit of the workshop. So now for a little bit of background and context, how long have dubbing and subtitling been around, Jean-François?
Well, a bit of history, as you said. The origins of dubbing and subtitling go back to the early 1930s with the advent of talking film, especially from 1929 in Europe. Different methods of translating film dialogue were tried simultaneously over a few years, including reshooting a whole film into any number of languages, which proved very expensive and artistically disappointing. Some countries started to favor one method over the other, or used both dubbing and subtitling. And the situation has remained fairly similar until today. And how does it work exactly?
So what is interesting and probably the main difference with many other type of translation is that in subtitling and even more in dubbing, the actual translation is only one step among a series of operations. For instance, in dubbing, In some countries, you have a first step, which is the preliminary technical step to prepare for the translation. Typically in France, a detector will come before the translator and indicates the time code in and the time code out of the dialogue. And the lip movements. Thank you very much. That's right. Then the second part is the translation and adaptation of the dialogue in a way which makes it as easy and natural as possible for the voice actors to speak it. This is achieved through lip-synching, which is adapting the translated dialogue to the mouth movements of the actors on the screen. Then when you've written your translation adaptation comes the third step, the voice recording. Dubbing actors play out the translated dialogue in a recording studio. And finally, the last step is the sound mix. The original soundtrack containing the music and the sound effects is mixed with the dub dialogue recorded by the actors. And this process varies a lot from one country to another, even within Europe, and especially in this part of the translation adaptation part, because sometimes the translator is also the adapter, and he or she writes the lip sync, and sometimes these two tasks are divided. The dialogue writer is a different person who uses the translation to write their own adaptation.
In subtitling, the process is similar, but it has a smaller number of steps because less people are involved, basically. The first step, which comes before the translation, but which is crucial for it, is called spotting. It has different names according to the country, but usually it's spotting. And this means defining where the future subtitles will appear on the screen. And that's according to the duration of the film dialogue or of the line of dialogue, to be more precise, and of course the space available on the screen within the image. Then the translation and adaptation comes. We have to adapt the dialogue to these time and space constraints, making sure the subtitles can be read, are easy to read. For example, to give you an example, if an actor speaks for 4 seconds, for example, delivering a line for 4 seconds, a lot can be said in 4 seconds. But we can only use up to 80 characters, including punctuation and spaces, on a maximum of 2 lines to try and convey what was said in 4 seconds. After the translation, there's a final step, which is called the quality check, or what we call in France the simulation, which is a kind of rehearsal where the film or program is viewed and final adjustments can be made if necessary. But from the actual translator's point of view, at the translation stage of each process, what are the differences involved for the translator?
So the essence of the translator work for dubbing is to write dialogue an actor will have to act as naturally as possible. It means that the text you write is going to disappear. It's going to be a dialogue, a voiced dialogue. So you have to really look at how the actor in the original movie moves, because you have to take into consideration the body language, not only the words, but also the body language of each actor and the situation.
Absolutely. And in subtitling, the essence is to condense, to select what really matters in the plot so that the viewers are not lost on the way. It's all about choices. But the trickiest part maybe is that some people will understand the original dialogue and read the subtitles and say, oh, but they didn't translate everything. No, because we have to make choices because of the constraints. Not everything can be translated. So we have to make sure what is most important in the dialogue so that the viewers can follow what's happening, but also make choices not just within the text, but in relation to what the text says, in relation to what we can see on the screen, or what kind of sound can be heard. If a door is slammed, for example, but even if we can't see the door, it may have some effect on the reaction of the characters and on the way they speak and what they say. So we have to take all this into consideration.
It's both are all about context, but really they are also the contrary, because subtitling is all about condensing, and in dubbing you often have to expand a lot what people are saying.
So what does it take to be a dubbing adapter or a subtitling translator?
Yes, the big question. I would say first and foremost, as in all translation fields, you need to be proficient in your own language, the target language. This is an extremely important point, which is often overlooked by wannabe translators. You must absolutely have an extensive knowledge of your language. You have to listen to how people talk to absorb this. You have to read a lot. You have to be curious about a lot of things.
This is very important because our field, whether we like it or not, is a very competitive one. And these days, with it's becoming even more precarious with artificial intelligence, which we're going to say a few more things later on. So if you really mean to enter this field, you have to establish yourself as a very knowledgeable translator, not only in the languages you translate from, but in your own language. This is crucial. And as we mentioned before, in audiovisual translation, you may translate all sorts of programs, whether it's fiction films, documentaries, um, reality shows as well. So you have to be very open to different things.
And in a movie, the original text is a dialogue carefully crafted by screenwriters. So ideally, an audiovisual translator is also a dialogue writer. And also, you need to be a good researcher when translating a documentary or also a fiction. It can be set in a specific time or specific professional setting. This means you have to be familiar with research method to find the right terms, because 1 minute in this trade you have to know all about emergency medicine, and the next minute you must be an expert in submarine or ancient Egypt.
Yeah, we're sort of jack of all trades, as they say.
So how long does it take to do all this?
The big question, one of the big questions of our trade. We usually answer this question by saying, as long as the time we're given by clients. So it all depends on the film, on the program, on whether it's for theatrical release or TV or platform programming. For dubbing, as a rule of thumb, you can expect to translate 10 minutes of a film or program a day. And subtitling, you can do a bit more, up to 20 minutes a day. And knowing this is very important, because knowing how long you're going to take to translate something helps you to find out how much you can charge to make a decent living.
Yes, and never forget that you don't only translate. When you're a translator, it's only a little part of what you are supposed to do. You also have to do your accountant, you have to speak with clients, you have to find your clients, you have to think about your retirement to put aside, you have to think of taking some vacation. So you have to think of all of this when you calculate what is a decent rate.
Yeah, this is very important, because translation is one thing, but all the other aspects are not paid. So you have to be really careful when you figure out how much you charge. Sometimes you don't have much of a choice with clients imposing fees, but you have to fight for a decent pay to make a decent living.
It's all about negotiation.
Absolutely, yeah, this is a crucial word as well. And what is our professional status?
Yes, that's the precaria. We are all, almost all, 99.9% freelancers. But like the literary translators, or like the literature translator, we are considered as authors of the translated dialogue, whether for dubbing or subtitling. International treaties and some national legislation recognizes as such. And this means we are entitled to receive money from the exploitation of our authors' rights when film and programs are shown. This is a payment on top of the initial payment of the translation.
The problem is that not all countries implement such treaties and legislation, and we have to fight to have our authors' rights recognized. Even the simple fact of being credited for having translated the dialogue, for example, just like our literary translator colleagues have their name printed on the cover or the title page of a book. Now, we mentioned AI before, artificial intelligence, and are dubbing and subtitling impacted by it?
As all form of translation. And today we're not asked if we are the one who do the voice any longer, but are you not going to be replaced by artificial intelligence is the most current question.
That's right.
So AI is crimping into dubbing and subtitling. You all know the automatic subtitling as used in YouTube. And these are the product of automated subtitling based on speech recognition and automatic speech-to-text translation. And automatic dubbing is also on the rise using similar technologies.
Of course, there's nothing intelligent or nor artificial in these technologies. And to achieve some sort of quality, human beings remain needed to post-edit, as the term is used nowadays, to post-edit the automatic translation, but the results remain poor. What's worse, the use of AI in dubbing and subtitling amounts to theft. Existing translated dialogue, as well as the voices of dubbing actors, are stored and mined, in other words, stolen. Resisting the spread of AI is in audiovisual translation is essential, not just to protect our profession, but also to fight against the dehumanization of creation.
So that was it for us. Thank you very much. And now we're going to answer your questions. If you have any, we're happy to, we're here for 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. So, okay. So as newbies, what are the first steps we can take to enter the market? Where to start? So that's always the question.
Yes, maybe the first thing to do is to find out whether there is an association of audiovisual translators in your country. And to find this out, you can go to our website, the AVTE website, Audiovisual Translators Europe, where you will find all the more than 20 countries listed and about 23 national associations of audiovisual translators, which are members of that federation. And this is a very good step to find out where they are, and you can contact these associations very easily, and they'll be able to tell you more about the situation in your own country.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good idea anywhere, in any case, even when you're not a newbie, to join the national association, because it's a very, very solitary trade. So you must be, as a newbie, you must be prepared for kind of a solitary life. So it's a very good thing to try and find your peers, and not only to know how it's done and who are the clients and how to find them, but also how to negotiate and also to be able to complain altogether about how difficult this is.
We asked whether it's ABTE. Yes, that's right. Maybe you can type in the website, yes, maybe in the chat, Estelle.
Yes, yes.
And while you do this, we are asked also what are the prices or the fees we can get. It varies a lot from one country to the other. And in dubbing and subtitling as well, you can find differences. It also depends on who your client is. For example, where if you work for streaming platforms with intermediaries or middlemen, as they say, which are called language service providers, it's usually fairly low, and you have to fight for really good fees. In if you work directly for the client, the end client, as we call them, it's a little bit easier to negotiate a decent fee. So it all varies. And once again, in that field as well, if you go to your own association in your own country, you'll get more information for this.
But it's crazy how it can vary it, even within a country. You can, in some countries, you can be proposed €1 per minute of runtime minute. So it means for a whole movie of 90 minutes, you will be paid €90.
Yes.
Sometimes in France, for theatrical release, for instance, where you're paid by the subtitles, not by the minute, you can get like €4,000 for the same movie. So
we hope this answers the last question we can, or the latest question we can see here about the rate, whether it's an amount per day, per hour, per subtitle. It's usually, it's basically, it's per running time of film or program, especially in dubbing. In subtitling too, but it can be, with subtitling, it can be, as just as Estelle said, it can be a rate per subtitle. So if you have, because a film can be very talkative or very quiet in terms of dialogue, so it can vary a lot. And only using the running time reference is not always fair.
Because sometimes you can spend twice the same amount. For instance, in an episode, a 45 minutes episode of a series, which is going to be very, very talkative, you can have 700, 800 subtitles. And sometimes it will be a quiet one with only 300 subtitles. So it means you work for the same rate, but you have worked twice more for a talkative series. Yeah. So a runtime minute rate is the actual normal established kind of rate, but it's not reflecting really the amount of work. So do you feel protected by the European law on the subject matter of AI?
Ooh, that's that's the big issue at the moment. Yes, the recent AI Act sort of protects us to a certain extent. It would take a long time to go into details now, but basically there's a clause which is called the text and data mining, or data mining, TDM, which is very problematic for us because it would allow basically the big tech corporations to mine everything on the internet, which they already do. And we have this legislation gives us the possibility of opting out, which means stating that we don't want our work to be used or stolen, but it's tricky to actually enforce. So it's very difficult. And recent developments in the current elections in the United States won't make it easier for us, I'm afraid.
Can you tell us how? Do we have time? I think there's one last question. Can you tell us how you entered the world of translating for subtitling and dubbing?
Oh, well, go ahead.
Me, it was by complete, I was going to say mistake, but it's not the right word. By chance, really. I got a friend, that's what I was mentioning before, the importance of being good in your target language. A friend told me, oh, this company is looking for subtitlers. I started in subtitling. This company is looking for subtitlers that can speak good French. They could not, there was too many people being good in English, understanding well English, but not being able to write in proper French, in the proper target language. And I think as I was proficient in that, it was easy for me to get in the trade. And that's how I started, because I didn't study this at all. I studied philosophy.
Well, I started quite a long time before Estelle did, and at the time I started by working in a film festival where I did translation, and then this led to an actual job or assignment, and then from then on I was into the field. But which is why it could be interesting also for you, if you're interested in this kind of translation, to attend film festivals. It's not a guarantee that you'll get something, but at least you'll know a little bit more how things are done.